He's not staying in Israel. He's never going to read Torah. He's never going to observe the Sabbath. He's not going to get circumcised. Okay? But his theology consists of one point that is the ultimate point. Who is the true God? So what does he ask the prophet for? Dirt. Can I take some dirt back? Load up my caravan with dirt. This is why in the Old Testament we have the concept of cosmic geography go to another level. There's this sense, well, if this is the way it is, then I can only be rightly related to the real God, the true God, Yahweh, if I'm in his land. So when I'm outside the land, that's dangerous. It's dangerous territory because it's under dominion of some other God. They even have this sense of going out into the wilderness, like when they're journeying after the Exodus, when they're journeying to the promised land and the presence of God, like it was in Eden, now it's with the tabernacle, with the Ark of the Covenant. If you ventured outside the camp into the wilderness, that was the place where demons were. We have Leviticus 17. They were out there sacrificing to demons, like to placate them and keep them at bay. And God, don't do this. You're missing the point, dude. They have to correct this. And part of the corrective is the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 16. But you had this sense that to be outside of God's camp is to be in a place that is hostile to God's people. It's the place where Azazel, the Satan figure of the Old Testament, that's where he is. It's why the desert places in the prophets are described with weird, crazy animals that get identified with demons. It's why you get this sense that this place is under dominion. And this worldview that emerges from Deuteronomy 32 is reflected in a number of passages. Naaman, when Naaman comes to Israel to speak with the prophet to be cured of leprosy, and he is cured, and he says, now I know that Yahweh is the God of all gods, and I will never worship another. What does he ask the prophet for on his trip back home? He's not staying in Israel. He's never going to read Torah. He's never going to observe the Sabbath. He's not going to get circumcised. Okay? But his theology consists of one point that is the ultimate point. Who is the true God? So what does he ask the prophet for? Dirt. Can I take some dirt back? Load up my caravan with dirt. And, Elisha says, yeah, good, fine, go ahead. Take all you can carry. And we're not told what he's going to do with it, but he actually explains to Elisha, look, part of my job is I got to take the king. I'm a big captain and I'm the commander-in-chief in Syria, and I got to take the king into the temple of Ramon sometimes, and the king's kind of old, and when he bows, I got to hold him up, and I'm kind of bowing with him, but I want you to know that I'm not worshiping Ramon. So I don't know if he took dirt with him, like as a protective thing, like I need the turf of the God of Israel with me, or if he just used it as his house to build an altar on, to worship Yahweh. We don't know. But the one thing we do know is that he ain't worshiping any other God. And Elisha says, good. That's good theology. It also shows faith. It shows belief. It's believing loyalty. We know where Naaman's at now. You get it. With David, when he's kicked out of Judah and he's lamenting, how am I going to pray to the Lord now? It's like David's not denying God's omnipresence. He has a sense that to be related to God, he has to be in Israel because the other nations are under dominion. Okay, we've got the episode with the Ark of the Covenant when the Philistines take it. They take it to the temple of Dagon, which is comical. It's funny. The next day, Dagon's just a stump. His head's lopped off, his arms, his limbs. He's just laying there. But we miss... In 1 Samuel 5, this is 1 Samuel 4 and 5, but in 1 Samuel 5, we miss the part that says, to this day, the priests of Dagon refused to walk over the threshold where they found Dagon. Why? Because Yahweh has taken dominion of that turf. This is where Dagon was defeated. That little patch of ground, we're not taking any chances. We're walking around it because now it is under the dominion of Yahweh. This is cosmic geography. It plays out in all sorts of passages. When we get to the New Testament, you're going to have the same ideas play out there too, but it all extends from Deuteronomy 32. Again, Deuteronomy 32 worldview. Like Pentecost, again, just to foreshadow in the last few minutes here, where we're going with this. Again, if you've read Unseen Realm, you know exactly where this is going to go. If you haven't, this is going to be news. But there's a reason why the nations at Pentecost, you have Jews from all over the world. They've been scattered all over the world in exile. They come to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast at Pentecost. They witness people able to speak in their own languages supernaturally because of the arrival of the Holy Spirit. And the message is about this Jesus of Nazareth guy who was put on a cross and then he rose from the dead and he's the Messiah. And they believe. And then they take that message back home, back to their countries. Well, we actually get a list of those countries, and they proceed from east to west. They cover the territory from the Jews in exile in the east all the way through, not just where the Jews are, where they're living because of the captivities and the exiles, but it also picks off a number of the nations that are listed in the table of nations. It actually covers all of the regions except for one, that's Tarshish. Okay, and Paul covers that in his pursuit to get to Spain, because Spain was Tarshish. Again, we're going to cover all this later. But if you keep reading through the book of Acts, we have other places. Why does the Spirit of God take Philip and just supernaturally transport him from where he was to Azotus? Azotus is Philistine territory. Okay, why do we have the episode with the Ethiopian eunuch? The guy from Ethiopia that Philip, again, in the chariot, he witnesses to him and the guy becomes a believer. Okay, because that's territory that a Jewish settlement had been in the Old Testament. And that's Acts chapter 8. You have all of the Jewish territories covered first, and then you start picking off Samaria and Azotus and these Gentile territories, to the Jew first, then also to the Gentile. Okay, this is a pattern. It's a pattern that the purpose of it is to announce that Jesus the Messiah was not just the Messiah of Israel and of the Jew. He is the Messiah of the entire world. He wants every nation to come back into the fold. And the business of the gospel is to get believers in all of the nations, extract them into God's family. And Paul, eventually, the last thing he wants to do before he dies is get to Spain, which is Tarshish, which is the last spot, the last region in the table of nations that has not been covered by the gospel.